introduce.
I was on mute. Go ahead.
Actually, Dave Vogel is going to introduce staff warrant.
Hello, and welcome back to the virtual Rotary 7620 District Conference, Session 2. Just as a reminder, if you need GoToWebinar help during this session, please visit support.goto.com/webinar. In addition, later today we'll be doing the 4-way test speech contest. You can find your score sheet in a few ways. First, you can type this bit.ly link right into any URL. Secondly, you can go to the handout section of GoToWebinar, which is on your right control panel, and download it there. You also can find it on the district conference website at rotary7620.com. We'll now pass it on to our MC for today, Kate Dawson.
Welcome to the second general session of the district conference. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, please join me in the 4-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? A quick recap from last night. We received so many compliments on Doug Tallamy's presentation on the environment. We want to remind you that the session was recorded and is available to you on the district website. And speaking of Doug Tallamy, the Rotary, this Rotary year, the Rotary Club of Frederick in District 7620 celebrated its 100th year of service. To honor our conference speakers, the club has made a gift to the Rotary Foundation in the focus of the speaker's choice. Dr. Tallamy has selected the focus area of the environment. Again, we want to thank Doug Tallamy and the Rotary Club of Frederick. The winning golf team shot a 57 in yesterday's district golf tournament. Congratulations to the Moles and Sours from the South Frederick County Urbana. Moving on to the program for today, we have some new and some traditional segments for you. That would include our honoring 12 local heroes that went above and beyond during the pandemic, and our annual four-way test contest that will take place during this session. Do not forget to use your score sheet that was attached to the email containing the meeting links. Our keynote speaker for this session is Dr. Saf Warren, who will provide us with an update on the COVID pandemic and what we can expect. He will be able to take your questions and that you put into the chat box. Let's get the second general session of this district conference underway. It is time for the four-way test speech contest. Matt, take it away.
All right, everybody ready for the best part of the speech, the best part of the conference? I know I am. Again, we're getting ready to go into the four-way test. And I'd like to remind everybody just what the four-way test is, right? It's just 27 words, 4 questions. And I think the best part about the four-way test is it's a very easy diagnostic to use to evaluate a decision. And I know a lot of Rotarians, you know, we recite it typically at the beginning or end of any meeting, and sometimes we can kind of lose its power, right? Just by rotely, you know, saying the 4 questions at the end of or at the beginning of every meeting. And I think this is, you know, the really good opportunity just to see, and I think really appreciate just how powerful this ethical tool that we have at our disposal is. This competition couldn't happen without a bunch of legwork, you know, that was involved. So I would be remiss if I didn't thank, you know, a few folks here. First off, I'd really like to thank Tamara Okonski, who she and I have been working diligently on the committee to make this happen. Her tireless efforts are greatly appreciated, and she really, you know, put forth a tremendous amount of effort, especially, you know, coordinating with the kids in terms of, you know, getting them here to be able to do their speeches. Second is Marilyn Nevy-Cruz for reaching out to the interactors in order to have them, you know, participate. Once again, if anybody isn't thanking Ashley, Ashley's done a tremendous job here in terms of putting this together, a lot of effort here. I also like to thank all the sponsoring clubs, as well as the new clubs that are participating, and also the mentors, you know, that have been reaching out to help these kids, you know, prepare for their speeches. And finally, I'd really like to thank the 19 applicants. We had 19 applicants that started this process, and we've now winnowed it down to the 4 finalists that you're about to see, okay? Now, I can't stress enough that you guys are about to hear some really extraordinary speeches that are going to make you really feel proud about having the 4-way test. I have the easy job of putting them together, right, and coordinating this. You guys now get the really tough job of trying to judge them. Now, I'd like to share with you, you know, a few pointers before the speeches, right? First thing is, if you don't have a pen and a piece of paper, or a pen and a scoring sheet, even better, I would highly suggest that you make a note about the topic of the speech. Most people remember topics more than names, okay? So make sure that, you know, as they're going, you make a note like who the first speech, what their topic was, because I think you'll probably remember that, you know, a little bit more than, you know, just the name. Second is, remember the criteria here that we've weighed is important, is weighed between what I like to call steak versus sizzle, okay? So although showmanship is a real important, what I call the sizzle side, is a real important component of the speech, give it its weight accordingly, okay? Because we really want to focus on an equal weighting that's described on those scoring sheets that we've alluded to. Now, when I introduce the contestants, I'm going to introduce them by name only, okay? This is so that there's no influence. So we try to keep this as pure as possible in terms of clubs either recognizing their own contestant or either, via the identification of the Rotary Club or identifying, what district they're in or area they're in by identification of the high school. Now, when we come back to announce the winners, we're going to ask the candidate a few questions about school, sponsoring clubs, grade, future plans, that sort of thing. Okay, so that will be revealed. Okay, during the course of the presentation. I would really ask you to focus on the judging guidelines on the scoring sheet as you score the speeches. And then last but not least, I'd like to go over 3 final things just to remember, okay? The first one is that subject matter doesn't count towards the speech, okay? The second one is that subject matter really doesn't count towards the speech. And then if by this point you don't know what my third one is, you probably haven't been paying attention. The third one is subject matter is not a criteria, okay? Now it's very easy to vote for the speech that you most agree with, okay? It really is, very common for people to, you hear a speech, you agree with it, it resonates the most with you. I'd like you to fight that temptation because remember, the subject matter is not part of that criteria. Okay, and I would ask you please to fight your urges to do that. So finally, I would ask everyone here as judges to try to put forth the same level of effort in judging as our contestants have in terms of preparing their speeches. You guys hold a lot of sway, right? There's some significant prizes that are going to be awarded, okay? So I ask everybody to pay attention, enjoy, and judge accordingly. Okay, so with that, I'd like to introduce our first speech, and our first speech will be given by Christopher Salarier. Chris.
Feel good? Can you guys see and hear me clearly? Just want to make sure we're good before we start. All right. Civil discourse is on life support. Let's talk about it. What do I mean when I say civil discourse? Well, simply put, I'm referring to the notion for 2 individuals to have an open dialogue on what I would call controversial topics or hot button issues. I say it's on life support because we aren't having these conversations. We become too uncomfortable, too defensive, opinionated, and in worst case, belligerent about these matters, and we're not going anywhere. We aren't having a conversation. We aren't growing as individuals, and most importantly, we aren't growing and healing as a society. This is something we need to address before it is too late. I'd like to present some anecdotal evidence that you all may be able to relate to. My parents are a prime example of this phenomenon. My mother is a little more liberal leaning in her ideologies, and my father a little more conservative. But normally they see eye to eye on a lot of matters. Of course, when it comes to some of these hot button issues like politics, society, economics, even religion, they don't always agree. Now, their civil discourse never devolves into argument. Instead, they tend to simply agree to disagree. This is great in a healthy marriage, as you may know. However, it prompted me to ask the question, well, why is this the case? Why is it that they aren't trying to understand where each other is coming from and instead simply backing down? So I took a step back to open my field of view to my greater society and environment around me to find an answer. Any teenager on the internet in this day and age can tell you about cancel culture, about people publicly feuding through the safety of their smartphones, tablets, or computers. I want to focus on a specific group of this internet subgenre known as echo chambers. What is that, you may ask? Well, these social media platforms give you the opportunity to create threads, forums, blog posts, where you express an opinion or an idea, and like-minded individuals can actively search that out. They can actively resonate with that idea. This usually isn't harmful until we see patterns of confirmation bias, people actively searching one another out to reaffirm their ideas to prove they are correct. That warrants concern. It becomes dangerous when we see cult-like behaviors, when we see behaviors of self-indoctrination, of proselytization, actively converting others around their community. That's scary. I'm not saying we can't have our own interests or opinions, quite the opposite, in fact. I'm saying we must protect those. And more importantly, we must protect our identities and what we believe, because our identity is the culmination of our life experiences. That is something to value. In turn, we must respect the life experiences of others and try to learn from one another, because that is the only way we as individuals can grow, and in turn, we as a society can so desperately heal. A big part of this speech is our four-way test, so I'd like to begin with what I deem to be the most important. Is this the truth? Is my claim that civil discourse is on life support the truth? I firmly believe yes, this is the case, and I'm not alone in this sentiment. Publications from pretty renowned universities, such as the Johns Hopkins Newsletter, the Harvard Gazette, the Cornell Chronicles, all echo the same sentiment. They all are concerned about a lack of civil discourse in our society. If you prefer mainstream media, you can find this same sentiment from the Wall Street Journal, from the Washington Post, from CNN, from New York Times, among other sources, all saying the same issue. We are not having these conversations anymore, and it's hurting us as individuals and as a society. The second point to our test, is this fair to all who are concerned? Well, who even is concerned? I say everyone should be concerned. Why? Because if you ever had an idea, a notion, or a virtue you've expressed, that was your identity. That was your life experiences collectively speaking for you, and you should be willing to defend that. In turn, you should be willing to make an effort to be more empathetic to others' life experiences and understand them too. The third part of our test, will this foster goodwill and better friendships? Once you begin to understand someone, the way they think, how they think, why they think, begin to value them. You get a holistic sense for who they are, and that's beautiful because you can appreciate someone not just momentarily, but for a lifetime. We can create friendships that aren't just days, weeks, and months, but years and generations across families. That is what we should strive for, and we can only get there by civil discourse. Now the last point, is this beneficial to all who are concerned? Well, if we're having this open dialogue, if we're having these conversations, if we're understanding ourselves and what we believe, if we're understanding individuals better and in turn healing as a collective, then yes, this benefits everyone because everyone should be concerned. I said civil discourse is on life support. It's not dead yet. We can still save it. I want to give you this message. We need to be less ignorant, less arrogant, put our egos aside, and just listen more. Be more empathetic to one another and our causes. For the past decade or so, it hasn't been very pretty, our political socio-status. Every day on the news, we see another shooting, we see more bloodshed, we see more families broken up and crying, and it won't get better if we don't start talking about these issues. We need to do more, we need to be more proactive, and we can only do that through civil discourse. Thank you.
Excellent job, Chris. Excellent. So now I'm gonna give everybody about a minute or two just to go ahead and mark your judging sheet accordingly. As you can tell, this is a very difficult thing to do because all these speeches will be excellent. And so while you guys are doing that, I'll give you guys some time here. Make some notes. Encourage you to confront your confirmation bias by perhaps visiting a Lions Club meeting if you can tolerate it. I'm just joking. Excellent speech. Okay. So I hope everybody has been able to gather their thoughts. And with that, I'd like to introduce our second contestant, Fernando Jurado. Fernando, it's time for you to start.
Now can you hear me? I can't forget. My mind won't let me. I'm reminded of when I least expect it, and every time I close my eyes, it's like I'm there again. I'm still that same scared, frightened little girl. I was only 14, and this isn't how I imagined it to happen, but we were drinking. I couldn't stand, let alone walk, so he threw me over his shoulders. Next thing I knew, I was face down, the room was spinning. I started to feel pain in places I've never felt pain before. I didn't say yes. I couldn't. I didn't fully understand what was going on, but I thought I loved him, so I let him go. As time progressed, I later realized that that night I was a victim of rape. This is one of the million stories told by rape victims. Yes, you heard me right, a million and more. Our social and cultural attitude has now shaped the idea that rape is prone to happen anywhere, that you can't be safe with anyone, friends, family, coworkers, a boyfriend, or a girlfriend. I spent numerous hours researching this topic. So today, with the help of the Rotary 4-way test, I'll be determining whether or not our society is aware of the rape culture we have created. Is it the truth? Is it the truth that we are now living in what scholars call a rape-prone society? Rape is defined as a personal crime, a crime where your own body is used as a weapon against you. Nowadays, we have classes on consent and healthy relationships. But yet alone this year, study shows that rape crimes amongst young people went up by 30% in the last 3 months. This happened because of the closure of health centers and schools due to the pandemic. And since rape is such a difficult crime to prove because it happens behind closed doors, in the US, 68% of these crimes never get reported, leaving 32% to have been reported. And out of 32%, an outstanding 6% will ever end up in a prison sentence. So with all the facts given, we can determine that it is the truth that we're living in a rape-prone society. And it makes us wonder, is it fair to all concerned? Is it fair that victims of sexual harassment have to deal with secondary victimization, where people question their integrity and truth instead of the perpetrators? This questioning happens because of common rape myths. Rape myths are false beliefs and ideas about rapists, rape victims, and sexual harassment. They're often made to create hostility towards the victim, bias criminal persecutions, and excuse sexual aggression. And with the myth that rape is usually done by a sexually frustrated man, it's hard to think or believe that rape could be committed by a woman. But in the US, the National Sexual Violence Research Center shows that 1 in 71 American men will be raped in their lifetime, and that 1 out of 16 men that attend high school or college will be sexually victimized. Sexual orientation also plays a big role in this matter because gay, bisexual, and transgender men are at a 50% higher risk of being raped. So no, it's not fair that we question whether or not the attack actually happened. So let's now discuss the social paradigm that surrounds rapes and if it will build goodwill and better friendships. Jessica, from the ABC Australia blog, talked about her experience as a rape and how people questioned her and said things to her such as, "At least you didn't die," or, "You know what, just walk it off. It's gonna be better." She claims if she had better friends that would have helped her, she would not have gone through depression, those PTSD problems that she had, and it would have been way easier for her. So creating these better friendships could help somebody going through this very difficult time. Also, in the Oxford Academic Journal, they discussed women who travel in pairs are less likely to be raped. Think about this phrase. Let's slow it down. Women who travel in pairs are less likely to be raped. Goodwill means to act out of a good sense of moral obligation or duty. So why do men tell women to travel in pairs? As a young man myself, I don't think this is practicing goodwill. So let's teach our young men and women on how to live a life that builds these good friendships, that builds these goodwill, because this rape culture that our society has created isn't good. It's something that plagues us. It's an epidemic we should fight to get rid of. In other words, do I think it's beneficial to all concerned that we learn and teach about the realities of rape culture, consent, healthy relationships, and how to value each other more? Yes, because rapists aren't born rapists. They're made and constructed from the ideologies that sex equals power and control. Hence, applying the Rotary 4-way test to whether or not our society is aware of the rape culture, I've come to the conclusion that no, we don't shun the matter. We just need to be more aware of the facts to perpetuate a rape-free world. So to answer simply, yes, our community, schools, and society at large should use the Rotary 4-way test to bring awareness to rape culture. Thank you.
All right, excellent job there, Fernando. Again, you guys can see I have the easy job of just, coordinating and doing that sort of thing. You guys have the tough job of judging. And again, I would ask you guys, everyone here can see how much time and effort was put into, getting these speeches prepared and mastering them, and, speaking, without reviewing notes and that sort of thing. And I just ask, as you guys deliberate, you try to echo the same effort that the contestants did in terms of preparing their speeches. I know it's very difficult. So again, I'll give you guys about another minute or so, and we will move on to the next speech. Also, as you guys are judging, if you guys want to get involved and perhaps, maybe your club didn't participate, I will be giving some thoughts as to how your club can participate in next year. So stay tuned. Okay. So with that, let's go ahead and move on to our next contestant, our next, next speech. And with that, I'd like to introduce Joseph Bonney. So Joseph, if you could go ahead and please start.
Can you hear me? On April 26, 1986, a nightmare became real, and it terrifies the world to this day. It will claim 4,000 lives, some of the victims suffering so terribly it would have been merciful to cut short their lives sooner with a bullet. What happened? Chernobyl. Many have heard of the reactor explosion and meltdown at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The fuel was not cooled or controlled sufficiently. The water surrounding the fuel boiled and caused the reactor to explode. The fuel itself got so hot that it melted and burned. This disaster was a tragedy, and it has caused many to resent nuclear power. Today, many believe that nuclear power is not safe, that the nuclear waste it produces poses an unfair risk to future generations, that it threatens our communities with the prospect of nuclear weapons, and that it has no more benefits than any other power source. I'm here to establish, using the four-way test, that nuclear power is a safe, worthwhile power source. First, is it the truth? Is nuclear power safe? Well, according to a Gallup poll in 2019, 47% of Americans don't think so. Those against nuclear power sometimes call radiation nuclear power's invisible killer. But we have to consider the alternative, and many do not realize that the alternative comes with a killer of its own. The alternative is fossil fuels, and its killer is air pollution. A Harvard study published 2 months ago estimated that air pollution caused over 8 million deaths in 2018 alone, 2,000 times the death toll of Chernobyl in 1 year. According to Our World in Data in 2020, despite nuclear accidents, fossil fuels cause, on average, over 30 times more deaths than nuclear power to produce the same amount of electricity. 30 times more deaths. By replacing fossil fuels with nuclear, we could save lives. Clearly, nuclear power is much safer than many realize. In fact, it is the safest power source we have. Second, is nuclear power fair to all concerned? Those against nuclear power claim that nuclear waste poses an unfair risk to future generations. It is true that some nuclear waste is radioactive enough to be dangerous, and will be for far into the future. However, there are concrete solutions to this. Literally, Finland just constructed a concrete repository that can store 50 years' worth of the country's nuclear waste till long after it is no longer dangerous. One way to reduce the amount of waste is to reuse it. Nuclear waste still contains about 90% of its original energy, and many reactors currently in development are designed to run on nuclear waste. Finally, we have to compare the risk of nuclear waste to the risk of climate change from fossil fuels. It is more fair to leave our children a world with manageable nuclear waste than a world plagued with climate change. Third, will nuclear power build goodwill and better friendships? This is an unusual test for nuclear power, but it is nonetheless applicable. One fear surrounding nuclear power is nuclear weapons, and nuclear weapons definitely do not build goodwill or better friendships. However, this fear is misplaced, as, according to Britannica, reactor fuel just doesn't make very good bomb fuel, and even if it did, fuel processing is heavily guarded and an unlikely pathway to proliferation. On the other hand, As I mentioned earlier, nuclear power could save millions of lives every year, and saving lives definitely builds goodwill and better friendships. Fourth, is nuclear power beneficial to all concerned? Even if it is safe, what makes it better? Right now, we are faced with a pressing problem, and that problem is, how can we power the world without harming it? The world needs clean power. We need reliable power. According to NASA, if we do not address this problem, infrastructures will collapse, ecosystems will be compromised, and agriculture will fail. Fortunately, nuclear power is uniquely suited to address this problem. Nuclear power is the cleanest power source we have, as it has no emissions. And to quote an article published last month by the Department of Energy, nuclear energy is the most reliable energy source, and it's not even close. This is why nuclear power is worthwhile. Solar and wind aren't reliable enough. Fossil fuels aren't clean enough. Nuclear power has the unique opportunity to benefit the world in a way no other power source can. So, nuclear power isn't so bad after all. In fact, it is the cleanest, safest, and most reliable power source we have. In Southern Maryland, if you live near the Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant, you are statistically safer than I am, because I live near a coal power plant. Although nuclear power has challenges, I think the benefits and lives saved are worth it. I certainly think it passed the four-way test. But what do we do? There is a Chinese proverb that says, one generation plants the trees, the next enjoys the shade. I like to say, one generation builds nuclear power plants, everyone enjoys clean, safe, reliable energy. Governments and companies should think long-term and consider nuclear in place of fossil fuels. But what do? We don't decide which power plants are built. But in a way, we do. Public opinion and government policy definitely have an effect on which power plants are built, and we definitely have an effect on public opinion and government policy. So, if given the opportunity, try to inform others of the reality. Nuclear power is shrouded in fear-driven myths, but we can use our most powerful tool, our voice, to help the truth shine through. Thank you.
Awesome. Great job, Joseph. Again, I can't stress this enough. I don't envy everybody's position here, you know, in terms of trying to score the speeches. At the end of the next speech, we're going to ask you to vote, okay? And we're going to be directing you Ashley will be directing you to a place where you can put your votes. And remember, you know, when we're done, you guys should have a first, second, third, fourth place, okay? So again, I'll let you gather your thoughts on Joseph's speech. And again, give you guys another 30 seconds or so to gather your thoughts. And we'll move to our final contestant here. All right, so now that everybody hopefully is done completing their scoring, I'd like to introduce our fourth and final contestant. It's Nardos Kebede. Nardos, go ahead and start your speech.
All right. A few months ago, I did something that some might consider pretty radical. You ready for it? Okay, here goes. I deleted my Instagram account permanently. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Why in the world would a teenage girl get rid of one of the most popular social media apps out there? And you're right. Instagram is a free platform that allows users to share photos and videos all across the web. But has it served its original purpose of connecting and bringing everyone together? Or has it just served to isolate us more than ever before? By using the four-way rotary test, we will be able to determine just that. First, is it the truth? Absolutely not. This is because many of the images uploaded onto Instagram are actually edited by filters or just downright photoshopped. This changes the complete nature of the photo by altering the way the person appears, the lighting, and the background. Celebrities like Kim Kardashian upload these kinds of photos on a regular basis, where it makes them appear to have a completely exaggerated hourglass body shape or perfectly symmetrical facial features. Now, portraying these kinds of edited images to young and impressionable girls leads them to believe the lie that they are not beautiful or that something must be wrong with them because they look nothing like those images. But it's not just young girls that are being deceived. Millions of Americans have actually reported feelings of depression and dissatisfaction with their lives and jobs after scrolling through Instagram a certain amount of time each day. This is because the kinds of images they came across only showed the highlights of people's lives, where people pose with their fancy homes, their cars, and their vacation getaways, which led them to believe the falsehood that everyone else is living an extraordinary and carefree life, and that they're the only ones dealing with day-to-day challenges, and this is certainly not true. Second, is it fair to all concerned? Once again, the answer is no. Many do not realize that Instagram is actually designed in such a way to get its consumers addicted to it. This is because its software includes features such as bottomless scrolling, tagging, and live updates that keep its consumers engaged on the app hours longer than they otherwise would. Because if they don't, they start to feel anxiety and experience the psychological phenomenon known as the fear of missing out, also known as FOMO. But it's not just them who feel this way. Many individuals who don't even have access to technological devices or to the internet also feel as though they are missing out and experience anxiety because they are literally unable to keep up with any of the posts being uploaded. And this is certainly not fair to them either. Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? The answer is no. In fact, Instagram is actually known to encourage comparisons amongst individuals, which often sows the seeds for things like jealousy and rivalry. Psychologist Dr. Roberts actually concludes that MRI scans show our brains perceive and associate higher value to posts that have more likes than those that don't. Now, I don't know about you, but judging someone's worth based on the amount of likes they have doesn't seem to me to be very conducive of goodwill or better friendships. Not to mention the insane amount of cyberbullying that has increased on the app in recent years, where more and more people feel emboldened to comment nasty and derogatory things about someone's appearance underneath their posts. And this is not good for goodwill or better friendships either. And lastly, will it be beneficial to all concerned? No, it won't. While it will certainly benefit Instagram influencers and advertisers, even getting them up to $1 million per post, it will come at the high cost of the consumers themselves. It will come at the cost of the consumers' hard-earned money, where people's dollars are ripped off through false advertisements and inaccurately described products. It may come in the form of people's valuable time, where an estimated average of 6 to 10 hours a day are wasted on Instagram alone. Think of all that you could do with that time. You could catch up on some sleep, learn a new language, catch up on a book. The opportunities are endless. Not to mention that Instagram may actually be making our society more superficial by having us focus on the external rather than the internal. Now, to be clear, I'm not proposing that you delete your Instagram account like I did. But I do believe that we can all benefit from being more mindful of our Instagram usage and enabling ourselves to take a step back whenever we feel as though the app is negatively affecting the way we view ourselves or the way we view others. Because remember, it's supposed to be a tool used to connect us, not isolate us. Thank you.
Excellent speech, Nardos. All right, so I was just checking my Instagram account as you were at the end there, so I apologize if I came on late. I'm just kidding. So with that, everybody should be finalizing their tallying, and you're going to be asked to go ahead and vote, which is the hard part. Once again, I do not envy your guys' decision because I think we can agree that those were 4 excellent speeches. So what'll happen is Ashley's going to be sharing with you where to go vote. And if you could, try to finalize who your first, second, third, and fourth place contestants are. And once again, let me just kind of go through them real quick. You had Chris, who started us off with a discussion about civil discourse. Then it was Fernando, who discussed rape culture. Then we had Joe, who discussed nuclear power. And then last but not least, we had Nardos, who discussed Instagram, social media, that sort of thing. Okay, so again, if you guys could formulate in your mind what your first, second, third, and fourth are, that'd be great. And then Ashley, is there any way you can tell them where to go?
Absolutely. So you can see a short URL on your screen, and you also see a QR code that we now are all too familiar with thanks to restaurants and online menus. So you can either open a browser and type bit.ly/7624WT, or you can pull out your phone and scan that QR code. We will end the voting at 12:47, so that gives you 10 minutes to go ahead and do that. When you go to that screen, you're going to see something that looks like this. It's a quick Google form. As you can see, you're just going to choose one person for first, one person for second, one person for third, and one person for fourth. So again, you're going to go to bit.ly/7624WT or scan the QR code.
And if I can just make mention, my knowledge of IT is not all that great, but I just learned how to do a QR code. Ashley, with that QR code, it's basically you open your camera and you let it take over. You don't have to take a picture of this, right? You just kind of let it settle
Correct.
in.
You just hover over it and you'll get a little pop-up that you can click on and it'll take you right to the link. The website also is case sensitive, so please type it in exactly the way it is on your screen.
Awesome. And thanks again, everyone, for participating in this. And once again, voting will be open for the next 10 minutes until 12:47. And so I guess with that, I will turn things over to the next part of the presentation. Thank you again.
Wow, Matt, those students were so inspirational. It is going to be so hard to pick one winner who will be announced after we hear from Dr. Staff Warren. Rob Dews will be introducing Dr. Warren. Rob?
Good afternoon, everyone. Fellow Rotarians, family, and friends. My name is Rob Dews. It is my honor and pleasure to introduce our speaker today, a fellow Rotarian, a friend, a world traveler, community servant, and I guess most pertinent for his topic today, an accomplished physician, cardiologist, and medical researcher, Dr. Stafford Warren. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention some of Dr. Warren's many professional credentials. Dr. Warren graduated from Davidson College, Phi Beta Kappa, with a major in philosophy. He attended the University of Rochester School of Medicine in Rochester, New York, and completed his internship and residency in internal medicine at University Hospitals of Cleveland. He subsequently held the cardiology fellowship at Duke University Medical Center and was a fellow in the American College of Cardiology and a recipient of the Heart of Gold Award from the American Heart Association in West Virginia. He served as a clinical professor of medicine emeritus at the West Virginia University Medical School and the Marshall School of Medicine before moving to Annapolis in 2010. He is board certified in internal medicine, cardiovascular diseases, and interventional cardiology. He's also authored and co-authored over 60 articles in peer-reviewed journals. He's also served as vice chairman of the Clinical Scientific Advisory Council to the Maryland Health Care Commission on percutaneous coronary intervention and bypass surgery for the state of Maryland. Dr. Warren retired after serving patients full-time at Anne Arundel Medical Center for 11 years, and he now works part-time at Anne Arundel Medical Center in the Heart Station, teaching ECG courses to the internal medicine residents. He has recently co-edited a book on COVID-19 that will be published this August 2021. The first 28 chapters can now be viewed on Chemistry World's Open Table platform. He co-authored the chapter on pharmacotherapy of COVID-19. Now, I asked Dr. Warren to tell me something unique and funny about himself, and I will tell you that he always has a funny story to share. But he mentioned that he started canoe racing at the age of 40 years old. Now, I know not many of us ever crosses our mind to do that, but he started at 40 years old. He did competitive canoe racing, and I'm not talking about the canoe racing around your local creek or pond. We're talking about 30 plus miles of canoe racing. Also, I wanted to mention some of the things within Rotary. He's been a Rotarian for almost 15 years between West Virginia and the time he spent at Rotary Club of Annapolis. In true Rotarian spirit, he has participated in 2 Rotary International Service trips, one to Guatemala and the second to Uganda during the past few years. A local community servant, you can find Dr. Warren spending most Saturday afternoons serving as a mentor for at-risk youth with Brandon's Coalition for Success mentoring group. His compassion, wisdom, and knowledge have been invaluable to our group, and I've spent many Saturdays with Dr. Warren, and he's really made a difference in that group for the past 3+ years. And I asked another fun fact about Dr. Warren, but he didn't forget that he shared with me a few years ago that he also was an American ping pong champion. Now, I venture to imagine how many ping pong champions do you know, especially ones that are also cardiologists. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to spend too much time because we want to spend most of the time with Dr. Warren, but today Dr. Warren will present a broad perspective on the COVID-19 pandemic. He's uniquely qualified to discuss the topic as a specialist in diagnosing and treating cross-system illnesses that may affect multiple organ systems. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand by and welcome one of our Rotary treasures, Dr. Stafford Warren.
Thank you, Rob. Can you all hear me? See me? Do I hear anything?
Yes, we can hear you and see. We could hear you and see you, Dr. Warren.
Okay, very good. I don't have any funny stories to tell. Thank you, Rob, for that nice introduction. I don't have any stories to tell, any funny stories to tell today. And following those 4 excellent presentations is certainly gives me a task ahead. But today I'm going to talk
Dr.
about
Warren,
something very.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
you turned your webcam off. Can you turn it back on, please?
Yes, I didn't hit anything then. I'm not sure why it went off.
There you go. Thank you.
No. So today it's a serious topic. As I said, following those 4 excellent talks gives me a task ahead. But I imagine that most of you today know more about COVID-19 than you ever wish to know. But today my goal is for everyone listening to learn at least 3 things about this virus that you did not know, and maybe 1 or more of these will come in handy in the future. Now, first, a little history, and then a review of where we are today and a few thoughts about the future, and then I want to leave time for questions. Historically, Homo sapiens struggle with viruses. It started in earnest around 12,000 years ago, with viruses then beginning to spread with people clustering in agricultural communities, leading to the likelihood of viral spread. Viruses are unlike bacteria and protozoa. This is interesting because those things can live outside the human body. Viruses have to live inside cells. They're obligate intracellular parasites. They cannot live more than a few hours, or at the most a few days, outside of a cell, either that of a mammal or a bird. They cannot replicate outside of a cell. And since all viral mutations are copying errors, mutations cannot arise unless the virus is inside a mammalian or avian host. A typical SARS-CoV-2 virus accumulates 2 single-letter copying errors per month. This mutation rate's only about half as often as influenza, and it's about 1/4 as often as the HIV virus. Most mutations do not alter the virus significantly, but occasionally a mutant may emerge that's more deadly and/or more infectious. The UK variant, for example, is about 1.7 times more transmissible than the previously dominant strain in the US. It also may cause more severe symptoms. There have been about 19 variants so far, of this SARS-CoV-2 virus that we know about that have caused symptoms in humans. And we now have 7 of these in the United States that we need to be concerned about. More about that later. The worst viral pandemic was smallpox, which was eliminated by worldwide vaccination by 1980. It killed between 300 and 400 million people worldwide and wiped out about a third of Europe. The next worst pandemic was the Spanish flu. It didn't arise in Spain, by the way, which killed an estimated 50 million people, and we're still dealing with influenza variants now over 100 years later. Over the last decade in the United States, according to the CDC, between 12,000 and 61,000 persons every year have died from influenza, despite flu vaccines being widely available. Although in the last year, there's been a 98% reduction in influenza cases, probably due to masking and social distancing as a result of COVID. Because like COVID, influenza is a respiratory virus spread primarily by respiratory droplets and aerosols. An Australian researcher determined that droplets are propelled at an average speed of 200 miles an hour when one sneezes and 50 miles an hour when one coughs. But even quiet breathing through one's nose releases some aerosol viral particles into the surrounding air. As of April 15th, 2021, there have been over 30 million cases of COVID reported in the US. That's about 1 in 12 people, and over 559,000 deaths. That's roughly 1.8% of cases. In 2020, the US had the highest death rate on record, even surpassing 1918's death from all causes, even surpassing 1918, the worst year of the influenza pandemic. The total number of deaths in the world has now surpassed 3 million, with the US, Brazil, and Mexico having the highest number of cases, but India is rapidly catching up. The total
Dr. Warren, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have some folks on smaller screens that can't see you fully. They only see the top of your head. Can you angle your camera down just a little bit for us?
Sure.
Much better. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Sure thing. So I mentioned the total number of deaths, 3 million, and the total number of cases in the world now is 143 million cases. Phenomenal number of infections in 1 year. There are 7 coronaviruses that cause illness in humans. 4 of these just cause the common cold, but SARS, SARS-CoV-2, and MERS are the ones that can lead to death. MERS being the most deadly with a 35% death rate, SARS next with a 10% death rate, and SARS-CoV-2 with about a 2% death rate. 1.8% in the US approximately, and 2.3% in the world at large. I'll talk first about vaccines and then come back to medications to treat people who develop COVID and wrap up with some clinical manifestations of the disease. Before COVID, the fastest time to develop a vaccine was 4 years. That was a mumps vaccine. We still have no vaccine for HIV 40 years after its appearance in multiple countries. And now in less than 1 year, we have at least 7 vaccines that are commercially available, and it's just incredible that we've been able to achieve that in this shorter period of time. But we have ongoing trials for multiple other vaccines as well. Now, the Russian Sputnik V vaccine was used first. It was before phase 3 trials had been completed. It uses a viral vector, an allegedly non-replicating adenovirus similar to the AstraZeneca and the J&J vaccines. It's been reported to be 91% effective after 2 doses. That's the Russian Sputnik vaccine. There are 5 Chinese vaccines in various stages of development. The first 2 were released for use are the Sinovac and Sinopharm vaccines that use a different approach. They both use the complete SARS-CoV-2 virus, but it's inactivated or killed and given with an adjuvant to better stimulate the host immune response. Now, once in the remote past, polio vaccine was an inactivated vaccine, and 1 year it was not inactivated and actually caused polio in some of its recipients. Hopefully that's long ago history and will not recur with the Chinese vaccines. but it's a standard way of making vaccines. Many vaccines have been made that way. Sinovac was reported to be 91% effective in Turkey, 65% effective in Indonesia, and 50% effective in South Africa. Sinopharm was reported to be 79% effective after 2 doses. Now, the AstraZeneca vaccine, developed in conjunction with Oxford University, uses a chimpanzee non-replicating virus. We think it's non-replicating viral vector. For its vaccine, it's had problems with rollout in Europe, but it is inexpensive. It doesn't require more than normal refrigeration. It's been reported to be anywhere between 62 and 90% effective, but recently about 1 in 100,000 people have developed clotting in large veins. It's not yet approved for use in the United States. We come now to the Johnson & Johnson J&J vaccine, which uses a human adenovirus vector. It's only 1 shot. It also requires only normal refrigeration. It's been reported to be 66% effective globally, 72% effective in the US, and 61% effective in Brazil. At present, though, less than 4% of the vaccines given in the United States have been J&J. The same problem has emerged with this vaccine, namely large vessel venous clotting, often in the main vein draining the brain. It's been given a name now called VITT, V-I-T-T, or vaccine-induced thrombotic thrombocytopenia, which means you get blood clots with it and you have low platelet counts. It's very similar to something called HIT, H-I-T, which happens when certain persons are given a drug called heparin. There have been 15 cases now of this VIT reported out of 8 million doses. So that's only 0.00012%. Not very common. Now, it's probably going to be restricted, I think, to older people. Subsequently, these were young people and women primarily that had this occur. I think there was no one 60 or older who developed this VIT syndrome. So I think it's very likely that we'll see it restricted in some way to older people. There was excitement about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because they felt that there was 100% protection from death by COVID in the phase 3 trial, some 66,000 people. They had 7 deaths in the placebo group and no deaths in the vaccinated group. But I think it's unlikely that this will hold up when millions more persons are vaccinated. We're going to see deaths, I think, in some people. Now, both the AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines will be useful for poorer countries and rural areas because of both only needing standard refrigeration for transport and the Johnson & Johnson consisting of only 1 shot. Now, what about the mRNA vaccines that most of us received? Moderna and Pfizer pioneered a new technology never before used in a commercially available vaccine. It's not a live vector virus, nor is it a killed or inactivated virus. And unlike all the others I've mentioned, it does not enter our cellular DNA. All the others do. It's just the SARS-CoV-2 spike, which that carries some, but not all of the viral proteins of the SARS-CoV-2, just the spike proteins. The spike, though, is what binds to our ACE2 receptors found on many cells throughout the body. It's found in lung cells, it's found in the nose cells, it's found in our eye cells, it's found in the heart, it's found in our endothelium, the inside lining of the arteries, found in the kidney, and some other organs in the body as well. That's what this spike protein attaches to, and that's how the coronavirus gets into our cells. The Moderna and Pfizer vaccines have been 94 to 95% effective, more effective than any other vaccines now available. The only potentially serious side effect has been anaphylaxis, which occurred in 19 persons out of 66,000 in phase 3 trials, which is about 1 in 3,500 people. Not very often. It usually happens in the first 30 minutes after the injection, and it can usually be treated as an outpatient. It happens primarily in persons with a prior history of allergic reactions, especially to anaphylaxis to another medication. I've not heard of any deaths yet. I'm not saying there might not have been, but I've not heard of any deaths yet from anaphylaxis. As of April 20th of this year, 890, it's an amazing figure to me, 890 million doses of vaccine have been administered worldwide. But that's only about 2.9% of the world's population has been fully vaccinated. In the United States, 80% of people over 65 have been vaccinated, but only about a third of the population overall. Israel is the lead with 60% of their population vaccinated, then the UK with 50%, then holding up the lower end is Brazil with only 12%, and India still has less than 10% of their population vaccinated. But lest you feel complacent now that you've been vaccinated with probably the best and perhaps the safest vaccine available, you may be surprised to learn that there have been 5,800 breakthrough cases of COVID in vaccinated persons in the United States. Sounds like a lot, but it's only 0.008% of vaccinated persons. So not very common. Nevertheless, of those who did come down with COVID after vaccination, 6.8% required hospitalization, and mortality, it's versus 15% in unvaccinated, and 1.3% died. That's compared to 1.8% in the non-vaccinated population. So a little less, but still can be serious if one comes down with it. And by mid-April, 44% of the genetically sampled cases of COVID have been the B117 United Kingdom variant, making it the dominant one both in Maryland and in the United States. We now have 7 variants in the US, 2 of them rising in California, 1 in New York, and then we have the UK, the South African, and the Brazilian variants, in addition to our own D614G that came over from Wuhan and came through Italy into the East Coast. That used to be the dominant strain here. And we still are seeing an average of 60,000 new cases of COVID a day over the last week, and every infected person may cause a new variant of the virus due to a copying error that leads to a more virulent, potentially more virulent mutation. Well, what drugs do we have available should one have the misfortune of catching the virus? If you're exposed by contact with an infected family member or another close contact, there's only one drug that in randomized controlled trials has demonstrated effectiveness in preventing COVID, and that's ivermectin, the drug that's been used for over 30 years to treat parasites and also to treat mites. But it's also been shown to be effective against 14, at least they have some efficacy against 14 RNA and 5 DNA viruses. And it works primarily by modifying the host response to the virus, not by directly killing the virus, but by modifying the host response to it and maintaining homeostasis, if you will, in the host. It's listed on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines, and its discoverer, Dr. Omura from Japan, won a Nobel Prize for its discovery. It comes from a streptomycin bacillus found in the southeast coast of Japan back in the 1970s. In the largest of the randomized trials for prevention, came out of Egypt. It consisted of 350 persons that were exposed to COVID. 58% of those who took a placebo after exposure came down with COVID, but less than 8% of those people that took ivermectin came down with COVID. In the 8 prevention trials put together, ivermectin was 89% effective in preventing COVID in exposed persons. Now, for treating COVID, once symptoms are present, ivermectin was reported by the same person, Omura, who won the Nobel Prize, to show improvement in 83% of mild cases and 51% in late-stage disease. From a meta-analysis, it's an overview analysis of 42 trials, 21 of them being randomized trials. This was reported in a recent and very good 52-page article in the Japanese Journal of Antibiotics. Another meta-analysis by a consultant to the World Health Organization reported a 75% reduction in deaths when ivermectin was given to patients with moderate to severe disease. Ivermectin is safe, it's inexpensive, it's weight-based, the dosage, and it's available by prescription. But only one of these trials has been done in the US, and as it is generic and inexpensive, no large trials have been done. and the NIH has only upgraded it to a neutral position for the treatment of COVID. I've now personally treated 19 persons with COVID with ivermectin. The first of those being my son, who came down with COVID, and there's no question in my mind that it works. There are other repurposed drugs that are promising as well, including colchicine, used since 1500 BC for the treatment of gout. And a Canadian study of over 4,400 patients randomized to colchicine or placebo, the colchicine group had a 45% lower mortality and fewer hospitalizations. Another drug, fluvoxamine, which is an SSRI, it's on the market for depression and obsessive compulsive disorder. Also, though, has antiviral properties, and in only one study that I saw in print was effective against COVID. Nitazoxanide, another anti-parasitic drug commercially available, has antiviral activity and might be effective against COVID. But repurposed drugs like these that I've mentioned, especially if they're generic, generate little big pharma attention, and the trials done are smaller doctor-directed trials. In my opinion, the NIH needs to direct more funds into testing of repurposed drugs, as big pharma may be devoting more attention to new compounds that would understandably be better for their bottom line. Then there are a variety of immunomodulating drugs, including steroids, that reduce mortality when the disease is severe. Interleukin inhibitors like anakinra, that's on the market now for rheumatoid arthritis that reduce cytokine-induced inflammation in the body. There are things called JAK or NAC inhibitors like baricitinib, which has benefit when combined with remdesivir. And if early in the course of the disease, usually only in the first 3 days will it be effective, high titer convalescent plasma or two combinations. Pardon? Two combinations of monoclonal antibodies can be a benefit. And lastly, a few comments about the signs and symptoms of COVID. Generally, about 80% of people who come down with COVID will have mild disease, about 15% will require hospitalization, and about 5% will have critical disease, and about 2% will die. Age is the biggest risk factor for severe disease and death, the doubling of mortality every 8 years of aging. Minority groups have been disproportionately affected, increasing pre-existing economic inequality. A shadow pandemic has also arisen in mental health disorders that will not go away quickly. One of the speakers mentioned this a short time ago, the 30% increase in rape in the last 3 months. We're seeing a variety of abuse, symptoms of abuse, mental, physical, sexual, and depression, even suicide. It's clearly increased during this pandemic. So this is the shadow pandemic that will probably go on for some extended period of time after maybe the viral pandemic is behind us. You're all familiar with the classic triad of symptoms: fever, cough, and shortness of breath. In addition, fatigue is very common, as is a decrease in the loss of taste and or smell. Diarrhea can occur in about 30% and can throw people off track into thinking that it's something they ate, food poisoning or viral gastroenteritis. Falling oxygen levels is a hallmark of progressive or severe disease, and once this downward spiral begins, cardiac, kidney, neurologic, and blood clotting abnormalities often start showing up in 20 to 40% of patients when they're in the ICU. For those who recover, somewhere around 30 to 50% will experience long COVID or long hauler syndrome, with one or more symptoms including chronic fatigue, brain fog, trouble with memory, and shortness of breath. In a recent telephone follow-up study of 478 patients in France, an average of 4 months after COVID, 51% reported one or more symptoms, 31% fatigue, 21% cognitive difficulties, and shortness of breath in about 15%. And about a third of these went on to have further testing. And of these, 63% had lung scan abnormalities, 19% had lung scarring, and 10% had some weakening of their heart function. By formal psychological and neurological evaluation, 38% of this group had cognitive impairment. Only one small study has looked at treatment for long COVID. It's a study from Brazil. It had 33 patients that were given ivermectin, same drug I mentioned for prevention and for treatment of the mild, moderate, and severe disease. So they gave ivermectin to these 33 patients that were anywhere from 2 weeks to about 3 months out post-COVID. And they reported 88% resolution after 2 doses. And then another 7% resolved when they gave them an additional 3 doses. It's almost too good to be true, but it merits follow-up studies, as the long hauler syndrome may now be affecting millions of people. It certainly is affecting millions of people around the world. So to conclude, I expect SARS-CoV-2 variants to be with us for the remainder of our lifetimes and beyond, as the flu has been around since the 1918 pandemic. What's likely to change as a result? Well, first, masking when indoors with limited ventilation will likely become more commonplace. Secondly, more meetings like this one will be held virtually. Third, we'll develop more drug regimens to treat the disease. And fourth and last, vaccination on a regular basis is likely to become routine, maybe by a combined flu and coronavirus vaccine yearly. Moderna, I know, is working on that combination now. Now, I hope you can all think of 3 things that you've learned from this discussion, and we have time, I think, for a few questions.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Just a reminder to everyone, you can submit your questions in the question pane, and then we will prompt Dr. Warren with those. Hold on, Dr. Warren. Our first one is coming in, but they're typing, so hang on one second.
Okay.
Okay, the first question is, can you speak more about the monoclonal antibody treatment?
Yes, the monoclonal antibody treatment, there are 2 combinations of each one combines 2 monoclonal antibodies. And one of them, a person in China gave serum for one that they then made recombinant antibody from. And then I think the other person was, I believe, someone in the US. And then there's one other combination of 2. Both of these have been given an emergency use authorization by the FDA. So if you get monoclonal antibodies, you need to get them within the first 72 hours of disease. After that, they're not that likely to be of benefit. And they you need to get a combination of the 2 antibodies, one set of 2, and the 2 combinations of 2 each that have been approved by emergency use authorization, EUA, by the FDA.
Thank
It'd be nice
you.
to be the people that had really severe disease, and it would help them, but it doesn't seem to make a difference at that point. It's only early in the disease. And that's probably because early part of the disease is largely due to the virus, and then the latter part of the disease, when it becomes more severe, seems to be due to a dysregulated, out of control immune system. And that seems to be, because that wouldn't be responsive to antibodies at that point. It has to be responsive to drugs that modify the host's response to the virus. And that's why these repurposed drugs and the immunomodulator drugs that affect the body's immune response to keep it in some sort of homeostatic balance and keep it from becoming wildly out of control will help the people that have severe disease and are most prone to die.
Thank you. When might the vaccine be available and appropriate for children under 16?
It's a good question. I think there's probably no reason now not to give it to, no scientific reason not to give it to children maybe 10 and up. Of course, we know that children are much less likely to get serious disease. If they do test positive, they're more likely to be asymptomatic. If they have symptoms, they're more likely to be milder symptoms. But every now and then, you'll see someone young who dies from the disease and can get really quite ill. So it's now been approved for pregnant women, and I think it's not going to be very long before it's going to be approved for children as well. We don't know when. Just have to wait to see some announcement.
Okay.
Scientifically, I think there's no reason why people probably 8, 10, or beyond couldn't get vaccinated with it now.
Thank you. Are there any home remedies or unproven treatments that you would recommend people not try at this time?
Yes, hydroxychloroquine has clearly been shown not to be effective. Lopinavir and ritonavir, two antiviral drugs, have also not been shown to be effective. In terms of things it might be, if a person is deficient in vitamin D, then taking vitamin D is likely to benefit. The same thing for vitamin C. If a person is deficient, then taking is likely to benefit. Whether it helps someone who is not deficient, I think, is still an unanswered question. My impression from reading the literature is that it probably doesn't. And then there's another one, zinc. Some people have been given zinc. It's not good evidence that zinc works unless maybe it has a drug to augment it, but it certainly can't hurt. And one can try zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D, but unless one's deficient in any of those three, I'm not enthusiastic that it's going to make a difference.
Can you speak more about the Moderna joint vaccine that may be issued? Would that be expected this fall?
It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I know they are working on a combination coronavirus influenza vaccine. With the vaccines, with the influenza vaccine, they need to decide which variants to attack to make it effective against. And they've gone from univalent to bivalent to trivalent to quadrivalent. So, hit 3 or 4 different ones, depending on which one you get. Now, for older people, they increase the dosage that they give you over a certain age. So we'll just have to wait and see. They'll have to make a decision pretty quickly, though, for what they do next year, because they have to decide usually that far in advance in order to make the influenza vaccines. So whether we'll have it this next year or whether it'll be one more year, I think it's hard to say at this point. And now, of course, they'll have to test it to make sure that it still works on both populations, and that's going to take some time too. I wouldn't be predictive that it's going to be available this coming year, but I think it's very likely that we may have to get a booster. We know that the vaccine works for at least 6 months. How much longer it works for, a year, 2 years, we just don't have that answer yet. It's too new a disease.
You mentioned fluoxetine. Is that an effective treatment or prevention drug? If someone is taking that for depression, does this give the person some level of immunity?
It's an interesting question. It has not been studied. There have been no studies looking at fluoxetine in prevention. One can imagine that it might, but there's no study that would say one way or the other.
How long does it take for vaccines to come off the emergency designation from the FDA?
Well, the EUA will expire at the end of the pandemic. So unless the FDA panel will have to approve that, and then it'll have to go before the full FDA to say that it is an effective drug for this indication period that's going forward. So the EUA that they have, the emergency use authorization, is only for the duration of the emergency. And after that, the FDA has to make some, if they don't say anything further, then it's not approved by the FDA. If they do decide that it's effective, then they'll make a pronouncement somewhere along that period of time, usually before the EUA is expired or no longer applicable.
So this next question brings together your medical and Rotarian experience. There are some in this audience who are hesitant to take vaccines. Given that we Rotarians are social animals, how does this meet the 4-way test?
Good question. There's no scientific reason not to take the vaccine, period. And the mRNA vaccine, by not entering the nucleus of the cell, does not affect our DNA. It only affects the RNA in the cytoplasm. Smallpox, we all pretty much were vaccinated, and yet we're living longer now than ever before. Vaccines have been generally very helpful. They eliminated smallpox, killed 300 to 400 million people, and the evidence is excellent that we have now a really good virus. It doesn't have any significant complications. with the number of people in this country that have already been vaccinated, millions and millions. If you gave millions and millions of people aspirin, you'd find some people that would bleed into their head. And you'd say, oh my goodness, aspirin has to be banned. It can cause bleeding in people. So, I mean, every drug can cause side effects, but the anaphylaxis that's been reported in 0.008% of these people is certainly people vaccinated, extremely small likelihood of side effects. So I consider this vaccine, the mRNA vaccines, to be extremely safe, very effective, 95%. Influenza vaccines are probably only about maybe 50% effective, maybe 60% at the best. So this is an excellent vaccine, and COVID is nasty. You're gonna have a 1.82% chance of dying if you get it. And the older you are, the more likely you are to die from it if you do get it. Then I don't see that there's any absolutely no reason to avoid the vaccination with an mRNA vaccine. No scientific reason to avoid it, and every scientific reason to take it.
Do you see problems with other existing diseases rising, like polio or TB, as a result of focus on COVID?
It's an interesting question. Influenza, as I mentioned, has a 98% reduction this year because of our wearing masks, because it's a respiratory virus. Polio is still a problem in the two countries that still have it, in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And this certainly will probably impair people going out, workers going out and interacting with people in villages, I imagine. So could polio start to spread more? Yes, it might. But on the other hand, people are staying. That's not spread by respiratory. Polio is spread by the fecal oral route. So if you wipe yourself after having a bowel movement and then touch some food and then share that food with someone else, that's the kind of way that polio is transmitted. So I think with people not clustering as much, not having as many social gatherings, it probably will reduce all diseases that are communicable. So I don't see any other disease on the horizon that's going to be rising up quickly. Tuberculosis certainly is a respiratory spread usually, and that's a major thing. Some of the other drugs, some of the other diseases, rather, malaria still, infects a couple of 100 million people, probably on a yearly basis, and that's from being outside around mosquitoes and of course sometimes inside. But if people stay inside and don't go out as much, that may even decrease in frequency too. So I don't see that being a problem.
What is your thinking about when we'll reach herd immunity, or when, clubs and organizations such as Rotary clubs could meet back in person more safely?
Well, usually the thinking is somewhere between 70 and 90% of the population have to become either immune from having had it or immune from vaccines in order to achieve herd immunity. As I mentioned, 65-year-olds and older, 80% now have reached that stage. 80% is in the range where we would expect herd immunity for the 65 and older group. And I think we're probably around 10%, maybe as much as 15% of the population now have had COVID and may be immune on that basis. That's adding to the third of the population overall that's been immunized. So that's probably 45, getting close to 50%. I think we're coming very close to the tipping point where we're going to see cases going down, deaths going down even further, and we'll probably be coming toward that herd immunity. Of course, it's not a threshold sort of thing. Not you're there, then the day before you weren't. We're going to be gradually, I think, getting into that range.
Are any of the vaccines better or worse for women who want to get pregnant in the future?
We don't know the answer to that. If I were a woman who was pregnant, I would want to get the mRNA vaccine because it doesn't enter the DNA. And you just don't know what effect it might have when it goes into the cell nucleus and it affects the DNA. If the DNA is rapidly, causing cell growth as in a fetus, but that's just pure speculation on my part. There's no evidence whatsoever of one vaccine being any better than the others. But the CDC has recommended vaccines now as being safe for pregnant women. And of course, the vaccines we have been almost exclusively the mRNA, Pfizer, and Moderna vaccines.
Okay, we have time for just a few more. Do you believe there is enough evidence for ivermectin treatment to be recommended for treatment in places like the US and perhaps Brazil? Is it true ivermectin has been commonplace treatment in India, even though they're seeing a worsening situation there?
Yes, it is. It's being used now in 25 different countries. In 15 countries, it's used as part of the national program. And in the other 10, it's used in different parts of that country. For example, in India, in Uttar Pradesh, which is the largest state in India, they will bring, if you come down with COVID, the state government will bring you ivermectin to your door and give it to you. So ivermectin is being used in many countries, and I think I see no reason why. I mean, I've prescribed it for people. I gave it first to my son. He had diarrhea for 3 days. He had fever. He had a cough, feeling terrible. And 3 hours after he took the first dose, his diarrhea completely stopped. The next morning, he felt 50% better, and by another week or so, he felt back to normal. And every person I've given it to since then has felt that it made them better, and made them better within usually a day or the most 36 hours. So yes, I think ivermectin it's safe, it's cheap. It was given 3.7 billion doses have been given to people in South America and Africa for treatment of filariasis, river blindness, and other parasitic diseases. We just had yesterday someone coming to treat a tree outside our front lawn. And I was talking to them, and they have ivermectin, which is the original drug. It was isolated from the Streptomyces bacillus in Japan. We make now the synthetic ivermectin from ivermectin. But he said they use ivermectin to treat trees when they have mites, or to treat plants when they have mites. So it's used widely in veterinary medicine. I have a veterinary patient who says, "Oh yeah, we use ivermectin all the time to treat parasites in horses and cows and large animals." So it's very safe. Been around for 30 plus years. I see no reason why it shouldn't be given widely. But if you ask your doctor about it, he probably will have never heard of it, and would probably be reluctant to prescribe it, because it's not something that our government, our FDA, our CDC, NIH is yet recommending. NIH takes a neutral stance on it. They were negative initially, then they said, "No, we'll change our stance to being neutral." But I think they're behind the times on it.
Okay, we'll do one more before Rob comes back on. Are there any other corona or corona-like viruses that are lurking around that we haven't seen yet?
It's a good question. Of course, SARS could come back. It has a 10% mortality. MERS could come back, has a 35% mortality. And we could get other variants. SARS-CoV-2 was a new player. It looks like all three of these probably came originally from bats. In Saudi Arabia, the MERS went through camels, and that's the intermediate host. And we don't yet know what intermediate host SARS-CoV-2 went through. There's speculation, but no one really knows for sure. And so it looks like there may be 1.5 million potential zoonotic viruses, meaning viruses that can be transmitted from animals to humans, that are out there. And bats, of course, they carry a lot of these coronaviruses, and they seem to be able to carry them without getting sick. And they, of course, as long as they're inside a cell, this virus can have a copying error when it replicates, and that's a mutation. And that mutation may cause another new coronavirus to come along and bite us here in the future. Wouldn't surprise me. And there are a lot more bats in some areas than there are others. In the US, we don't have bats that are vampire bats the way they do in many places. I think in South America, they have 3 species that are vampire bats, so they're more likely to have a bat bite an animal, and then the animal transmit it to humans.
Thank you. That concludes our questions. Rob, back to you.
Well, thanks, Dr. Warren, for such a highly relevant and informative talk. You can tell by the questions, this probably could go on for another hour. And so we're highly indebted to you for sharing your wisdom, your experience, the information from a lot of research. And it's invaluable to get some accurate information from a very reliable source. So thank you for being with us, and thank you, absolutely, staff. We really appreciate it. This Rotary year, the Rotary Club of Frederick in District 7620 celebrated its 100th year of service. To honor our conference speakers, the club has made a gift to the Rotary Foundation in the focus area of the speaker's choice. Dr. Warren has selected the focus area of disease prevention and treatment. We thank our distinguished speaker and the Rotary Club of Frederick. Good afternoon.
Thank you both. That was such an interesting topic. Matt, we just can't wait anymore. Who is the winner of the four-way test?
All right. All right. I'm starting to get this technology down. So I do have the winners to announce, okay? And the results are in, right? So before I do the results, though, I do want to bring up just a couple of things here, okay? First off is if everybody could take a look at this screen, just real quick. I know that a lot of times people, they'll be watching this, they want to get involved and they just don't know the first step, okay? So what I've done is I've created perhaps the easiest email address ever to remember. So if you want to join if you want me to reach out to you or your club about how to sign up for the four-way test, all you got to do is email me at the email address here. And even if you forget it, you'll remember it because it's just the fourwaytestguy@gmail.com, all right? So you guys, everybody who wants to join, and again, just remember there's 3 different ways that you can do it. We can show you how to run your own club test, okay? We can show you if you don't want to run a club test, but you'd like to, sponsor a candidate that's at large from one of our Interact clubs or that sort of thing throughout the district. We have a way to do that. Also, if you'd like to mentor, we also have ways to do that. So again, if you're moved by this, which I don't understand how you couldn't, right? But if you are and you do want to sign up, or want more information, just email me at the address listed on the screen there, the fourwaytestguy@gmail.com. All right, so before I get into the winners, okay, I do want to meet a few of them, okay? So what I'm going to do is, this is just in, no order in particular. We're going to start with Nardis, if that's okay, okay? So Nardis, tell us a little bit about yourself. So where you got high school, what Rotary Club sponsored you, what grade you in, you got future plans for college, that sort of thing? Go ahead, Nardis.
Absolutely, Mr. May. So I am currently a senior at Wild Lake High School, and I am planning to attend UMBC in the fall. I am a part of a new member, newly joined the HOCO Interact Club, which I'm really excited about, and I haven't gotten the chance to do much yet because, like I said, I'm a new member, but I'm so excited for what they stand for, and I really hope to become more involved in the future. And I want to thank Columbia Patuxent Club for sponsoring the HOCO Interact and all their help in this whole process. And just a final thing, I had so much fun and I've really just learned a lot. And so I'm just very grateful for this opportunity. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And guys, keep in mind that, there's a lot of, there's a lot of folks that try to participate in this. I know, for instance, like my own club, we had about 39 entries, just in my club, 4 of which advanced, but none of which got to the finals. So just to kind of give you an idea as to what kind of funnel you guys are working your way through, it's everybody here has done a great job, regardless of first, second, third, fourth. So Chris, let's talk with you. All right. So Chris, I know that, can you tell us a little bit, just about, where you're from, sponsoring club, maybe some future plans, where you go to high school, that sort of thing?
Be a pleasure, Mr. May. So I'm a senior at Frederick High School, As for future plans, I will be attending University of Maryland College Park in the fall. I was accepted into the University Honors Program, so I'm looking forward to going through that. Hopefully, down the line, I have aspirations for pre-med. I'd love to become a doctor, specifically neurology or cardiology, but we'll see where life takes me. I do have to extend a big thank you to my sponsoring Rotary clubs, Rotary Club of Frederick and of Carroll Creek. They were both incredible. And I also want to give a personal thank you to both Ted Luck and Julie Gaver. They were a big help in me just preparing through the entire process. This was completely new to me. And it meant the world that they give me so much help throughout this process.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. All right, so next up, we're going to go with Fernando. Fernando, let me just ask you a quick question. If you could just tell us like a little bit about yourself, what grade you're in, where you go to high school, where you're from, sponsoring club, that sort of thing.
Hi, my name is Fernando Gerardo, and I'm from Washington, D.C. I attend CHEC, Columbia Heights Educational Campus, and my sponsoring club was the Washington, D.C. Club. First, I want to thank the club for giving me, and Rotary for giving me, the voice and the place to talk about such a big topic. And then also for my future plans, I plan to attend. I'm stuck in between two schools right now. Either go to Georgetown University or Stanford University for nursing. Basically, future plans is I want to become an endocrinologist, because as a diabetic myself, I would love to have a doctor who knew diabetes from like personal experience instead of a book. So yeah, thank you.
It's awesome. It's awesome. All right, so now last but not least, Joseph. All right, so can you tell us where you're from, where you go to high school, who was your sponsoring club, that sort of thing, if that's all right?
Hello. Yeah, I'm from Southern Maryland. I'm in 11th grade. I'm homeschooled. And I'd like to thank the Rotary Club of Charles County, the La Plata Rotary Club, for sponsoring me. I'm very grateful to them for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on nuclear power. And thank you to Rotary. Fun facts about me, I'm a runner. I've run 2 marathons and 7 half marathons. And that's about it about me.
That's awesome. Now, Joseph, just a quick question. You're involved in an Interact club down there, is that correct, or am I mistaken?
Yes, I'm the president of the Interact Club of Charles County.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, guys, I think I speak for everybody in the district that everybody here, did a wonderful job. Okay, and just so you guys are aware, and I'm sure you guys, the contestants already know this, but just so everybody in Rotary is aware, there's some significant prizes here, right? So 4th place is $500, 3rd place is $750, 2nd place is $1,000, and then 1st place is $1,500, right? So each of these contestants is going to come, walk away with a decent amount of money. Okay, so with that, I am going to go ahead and announce the 4th place contestant is Fernando. In 3rd, we had Christopher. In 2nd, we had Nardos. And in 1st, we had Joseph. Okay, so just want to thank everybody for joining, and congratulations to, to everybody that participated. Okay, and what we will do is either Tamara or I will reach out to you to arrange how to get you guys your awards checks. Okay, is anything else that anybody wants to say or anything like that?
There we are. I guess I'll just speak for everyone. We're all super grateful for this opportunity. This was an incredible experience, and I know that I enjoyed talking against all of you and listening to everything you had to bring. The topics were all incredible, and I'm pretty sure everyone feels the same way as we do. So truly to Rotary, thank you guys for allowing us this opportunity. And to my fellow contestants, thank you for letting me talk against you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. All right. So Joseph, you want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you, Matt May, for sharing this opportunity with me at one of my Interact meetings. And thank you to Mr. Zabriskie, president of the Rotary Club who sponsored me, for helping me with this. To thank you for this opportunity.
Awesome. All right. Great. Anything else? You guys don't have to, not required or anything. All right, perfect. So with that, congratulations, everyone. And I will turn things over from the four-way test side and back, I guess, back to, back to the rest of the conference. All right, thanks again.
Thanks, Matt, and congratulations, Joseph and the team. You guys did a really great job. But moving on, our two big award winners announced yesterday are going to present the Rotary Community Hero Awards. So next up, oh, sorry about that. Our two big award winners announced yesterday are going to present the Rotary Community Hero Awards. So next up is the recipients of the Service Above Self Award, Rich Glover and Rotarian of the Year, Sue Weber. Take it away.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Kate, for a nice introduction. It's an honor for Sue, there's Sue. It's an honor for Sue and I to recognize this year's Rotary Community Hero Awards. Our Rotary Community Hero Award recipients, because of your service to our community, and especially during the current pandemic, you've been selected to receive the Honorary Paul Harris Fellow, the Rotary Community Hero Award. Now, the Rotary Community Awards program was created this year to bring special recognition to non-Rotarians who practice the motto of Rotary, which is service above self. District 7620 is divided into 12 areas, and I asked each area governor to select one person from his or her area who best exemplifies the commitments that Rotarians hold most dear to us of service, fellowship, diversity, integrity, and leadership. To make you more familiar with our organization, Rotary is the largest service organization in the world with 1.2 million members and over 200 countries and geographic areas. Paul Harris, Rotary's founder, began Rotary over 115 years ago, and the Paul Harris Fellow Award was created in his honor. The award can be purchased for a donation in the honor of deserving community leaders, Rotarians and family members at a cost of $1,000. Together, tonight's Rotary Community Awards recipients of $12,000 were donated by two of our past district governors, Robert Parkinson and Raymond Strive. Your award is not a cash award, but instead recognizes your service to make the area where you live better for all. So for our first honoree in Area 1 is Dawn Marie Coffin. Now, Dawn Marie has been a critical care technician for 18 years in Upper Chesapeake Medical Center. As part of the first responder team, she worked with the nurses and doctors to provide the best care possible to each patient that enters their unit. Her role is to attach patients to the cardiac monitors if needed, obtain specimens and EKGs, start IVs to provide access for nurses to give fluids and medication. When COVID hit last winter, Dawn said she was just as scared as the entire world was, entering a phase that was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her team became physically and mentally exhausted, but gave their best anyways. Dawn said it was terrible going home to loved ones. We were terrified of bringing COVID home. We bleached our clothes, our shoes, our pens, carried our phones out in Ziploc bags, some striped in the hospital parking lot, others in their garages. We quarantined ourselves from our families to keep them safe. For Dawn, the hardest part was not being able to see her family for many months. She missed her grandchildren, but she understood the importance of keeping everyone safe. Thank you, Dawn, for your service to others during the COVID epidemic and serving on the front line. Thank you, Dawn. I'm going to pass this to my colleague, Sue, to introduce our area number 2.
Thank you, Rich. Beth Wolf is the recipient for area number 2. Beth is a volunteer leader with the Student Support Network. She is a tireless leader who manages the food and essential supply deliveries to families and students throughout Baltimore County. The Rotary Club of Towsontown in Area 2 has been driving food deliveries for Beth since the COVID shutdown began, and their members have been impressed with her leadership, her organizational skills, and her passion for helping families in need. With more than 1 in 10 households not having enough food to put on the table and cars stretching a half a mile long or more at food distribution sites, Beth Wolf and her volunteers are getting food and essential supplies to the most in need in the community. Back to you, Rich, for area number 3.
Thank you, Sue. John Fry. In 2017, John joined the volunteer team of the Community Action Council of Howard County, and since then has served over 1,000 hours at the Howard County Food Bank. John is passionate about serving those in poverty. What makes John a truly incredible volunteer is that he recognizes the limitations that nonprofits face and initiates actions needed to fill these needs. 17 nonprofits across 4 counties benefit John's time, ingenuity, resources, networking abilities, and kind heart. The Howard County Food Bank receives donations of all kinds. At times, they receive items that do not align with their main direction or being a grocery store for those in need. Rather than letting the donations go to waste, John organized swaps among the various nonprofits, taking items from one nonprofit to another. John has continued this important work throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. His kindness and passion have only grown to be more contagious as our community rallies to support those experiencing food insecurity. John makes every volunteer he works with feel welcomed and valued, whether it is their first day or their 100th day at the Howard County Food Bank. Congratulations. Sue?
For area number 4, Kalpesh Patel is a devoted husband and father living with his family in Sykesville, Maryland. He is also a successful business owner who has a strong desire to pay it forward and give back to others in need. As a pillar in the community, he is involved in many fundraisers. He raises money to help children with special educational needs and to fight against hunger. When he is asked to support or sponsor local nonprofits, he never says no. And whether he donates gift certificates from his business or he donates money from sponsorships, Mr. Patel is kind, generous, and humble, and very deserving of this Rotary Award.
Thank you. And area number 5 is Ajay Hill. Ajay from Area 5 created I Believe in Me, Inc. in Frederick in 2016 to help mentor disadvantaged youth. With the program, he inspires and challenges youth through mental, physical, and social activities that foster self-respect and respect for the world around them. In addition to mentoring, the program has also been an integral part of emergency response during the pandemic. Since the beginning of the pandemic, 2.5 million meals have been served and over 50,000 families have been fed. A Rotarian recently stated, "It is not often you find someone who truly embodies altruism, but Ajay does just that." Back to you.
Area 6, the recipient is Grace Rivera. When the COVID-19 crisis began, Grace became the co-founder and senior program director in the Up County Consolidation Hub, which operates in Black Rock Center for the Arts in Germantown. Using a staff of mainly volunteers, the hub serves approximately 1,000 families a week with home delivery and drive-through distribution of food, diapers, and other essential items. It has attracted important sponsors, and its work has been recognized in magazines and by members of the County Council. District 7620 is pleased to honor Grace.
In Area 7, George Jones. George has served as CEO of Bread for the City since 1996. As the CEO, together with the board of directors, leads over 100 workers in the development and execution of the Bread for the City long and short-term strategies. When the pandemic began, George shifted from not only feeding the needy, but also to open the medical and dental clinics in Washington, D.C. During phase 1A of the coronavirus vaccine distribution in D.C., he led the only non-hospital or non-pharmaceutical providing vaccinations. Congratulations, George.
For Area 8, we have Rob Shear, known as the first responder for youth in foster care. Rob, known so well to many of us, of comfort cases, works to eliminate the practice of handing trash bags to youth as the entire foster care. Yes, young people are told they must leave their homes and pack up what they can in a trash bag handed to them by a stranger. More than 25,000 comfort cases are assembled and distributed around the community and around the world to ensure that when a child enters foster care, that young person receives a beautiful new backpack filled with a new blanket, stuffed animal, toiletries, pajamas, a book, face masks, and hand sanitizers, and a loving note from a volunteer. Rob spent the second half of his childhood in foster care and has made it his personal mission to restore dignity and hope to youth in foster care everywhere.
Area number 9 is Jeriel Jordan. Jeriel is the founder and executive director of Jacob's Ladder Youth Foundation, whose mission is to reduce the number of juveniles entering and returning to the juvenile justice system. Mr. Jordan states, I have a sincere desire to help the youth in our community maximize their overall potential. I introduced Jacob's Ladder Youth Foundation to our community as a solution for many of our local young people experiencing adverse life outcomes, including incarceration, dropping out of high school, and engagement in risky behaviors. One of our recent programs focuses on securing employment. So we launched a job fair and exposed employment opportunities. Over 200 youth participated. Several received employment and paid internships. Mr. Jordan has worked in his community in Prince George's County for over 30 years as a coach, a teacher, and a police officer. Thank you.
For Area 10, we'd like to congratulate Monica Alvarado. Monica is the owner of Bread and Butter Kitchen in Eastport. When the shelter-in-place order went into effect in March of 2020, she realized that there were two serious problems before her: thousands of hungry people in the community and hundreds of restaurant workers who were about to lose their livelihoods. She began calling on friends, peers, nonprofits, and advocacy networks. From her sheer force of will and concern, Feed Anne Arundel was born. Monica with the combined efforts of dozens of partners, has provided meals and employment continually since March 2020. During the first 2 months of the pandemic, through Monica's efforts, more than 40 restaurants became involved, and they have provided more than 15,000 meals to the Eastport community. The number of partnerships supporting this effect continues to grow. It all began with Monica's vision to feed those in need while keeping restaurant workers employed during the worst of the pandemic-related economic downturn. Congratulations, Monica.
Area 11, Bernie Fowler Jr. Bernie is the founder of Farming for Hunger in Southern Maryland. The organization began with volunteers growing food for the hungry and supplying local food resource centers. As the program expanded, Farming for Hunger began to grow food in hydroponic gardens located at local elementary schools. Soon, with the help of the educators, Farming for Hunger created a curriculum built around making responsible food choices. As the students became older, making good food choices expanded into making good life choices in other ways and helped to attack the growing opioid problem. The concept captured the attention of both local and state leaders, including our Governor Larry Hogan. Today, students come to the farm to volunteer in a special program, or they hear from law enforcement officers, criminal defense attorneys, and judges, and even the incarcerated who explain to at-risk youth how making a poor decision involving illegal drugs can affect one's life for many years. Through Farming for Hunger, Bernie embodies service above self in his determination to help others and to make our state a better place for all. Congratulations, Bernie.
Our final area, Area 12, the award goes to Jennifer Amart. Jennifer's official title is the Equestrian Program Manager for the Greenwell Foundation in Southern Maryland near the Rotary Club of Leonardtown. When COVID struck, Jen created programs to meet the needs of special populations within the community and to keep them engaged. She tirelessly served the following: veterans, including those suffering from dementia or post-traumatic stress disorder, adults, and children with a wide variety of physical and/or mental challenges, families who bring their disabled family members to Greenwell, and adults living in group homes. Jen has personally been responsible for nearly 300 scheduled events during the pandemic. Thank you, Jen, and congratulations.
To all of our awardees, when it is safe for Rotary clubs to meet face-to-face, the area governor from your region will contact you to plan for you to attend a program where you will be introduced to Rotarians and other community leaders. At this program, you will receive your certificate and medallion. Again, congratulations to all of you, the newest honorary Paul Harris Fellow recipients in the world. Let's give a round of applause to all of our Rotary community heroes this year. Now back to you, Kate.
Kate, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes, congratulations to everyone. And also congratulations to our four-way test contestants. We all learned something new from each of you, and your deliveries were inspiring. And thank you to Dr. Warren for a very informative and up-to-date report on COVID and the vaccines. I think I speak for everyone when I say we are so ready for this to be behind us. Next up, the breakout sessions. There are 4 sessions in Block A and 4 sessions in Block B. Each session has an individual link associated with it that is shown on the slide. The breakout sessions are 45 minutes in length, and there's a handout with the links in the handout section on the navigator. Following the breakout sessions is a special business meeting for special attendees at 4:05. This will be the presentation and voting on the proposed district bylaws. In case you all didn't know, my name is Kate Dawson, and I am the president of the Annapolis Rotaract Club. Thank you again for joining us. We all look forward to seeing you at the 3rd general session tonight at 7 p.m. Thank you again, and Kate signing out.